Hello once again everyone, Tour de Force here. So I think we can all agree that music is one of the most diverse arts of all time, being made up of hundreds of different styles, genres, and ideas. All the way from the most mainstream like Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, and Michael Jackson, all the way to the most personal and diabolical creations. There is no shortness of variety out there, especially with the creation of streaming services. So if you are having trouble finding new interesting rock music, I'm gonna give you 10 different bands that'll hopefully segue you into 10 different paths to check out. And hopefully you'll learn something new about your music taste along the way. Anyways, let's get into my 10 bands to get you into experimental rock music. Starting off simple with probably the most well-known experimental rock band. And I often see this band nicknamed Baby's First Experimental Music in certain music communities. Everyone knows them for their hit song Creep, which the band despises. It's Radiohead. Radiohead is the top of the iceberg when it comes to experimental rock music, and it's a great place to start. They are a combination of alternative rock, electronic, depending on the album you listen to, and art rock, but are also often considered the start of post-Britpop, a movement that started in the late 1990s to revitalize the stagnation of normal Britpop. If you like calmer, slow pieces with lots of bittersweet vocal intensity, you should probably start with the Bends. However, when you are ready to plunge into the more experimental side, look no further than OK Computer, which has possibly the most controlled combination of easygoing, mainstream pop with the coldness and loneliness of serious topics. Even Kid A, the album that came out after OK Computer, has recognition as being just a little bit more on the experimental side. These 3 albums are great for figuring out what you prefer in rock music. Do you prefer eclectic genre blending, or do you prefer songs that work in the constraints of guitars and acoustic instruments? This band is really like a stepladder down into the avant-garde, making it a good starting point to any music enjoyer's journey. This is very much an oldie but a goodie. The Velvet Underground is an absolutely classic band that opens up another avenue of experimental rock music for you. This band's music will help you learn if you prefer newer, processed rock, or more raw, older sounding rock. Specifically, their self-titled debut album and their sophomore album White Light, White Heat has the best variety for introductory, old experimental rock music. In fact, the track listing for the debut album is almost exactly how I'd order it from least difficult to most. The controlled chaos and energy of these 2 albums had very few rivals during the time of its inception. Another great start to experimental rock music. It's iconic, it's influential, and it still stands up to this day. And among that, they also have their laid-back third, also self-titled album, that is also worth checking out. I'm a little bit biased on this one when I say it's the best way to explore experimental music, because it's really the band that got me into it. Yes's discography is a great introduction to not only progressive rock, but also technical music in general. Their sound is a combination of playfulness, melody, and harmony. Until I listened to this band, I thought of instruments as only just a background to vocals and lyrics, rather than as a symphony of moods, tones, and individual expression. I would recommend Fragile as a good start to learning how to gain an ear for good musicianship and instrumental quality. Close to the Edge, Tales from Topographic Oceans, and Relayer on the other hand, experiment way heavier on the tonal qualities, textures, and songwriting aspect. Give this band a listen if you haven't. You will not regret it. Usually when we hear about something being repetitive, we associate that with negative traits such as boringness and monotony. But experimental rock music likes to use repetition as a means to explore texture, variation, and endurance. Take the Talking Heads for example, specifically their magnum opus, Remain in Light. This album uses repetition as a weapon to drive energy levels through the roof. Many of these songs barely change rhythmically throughout their progressions, and they instead rely on keeping you in a certain mood or vibe for its duration. It's less about where the song goes, and more about keeping the song going. The songs Born Under Punches, Cross-Eyed and Painless, and The Great Curve all prove this theory to great effect, as the songs do not really change in their instrumental intensity throughout their durations. The Talking Heads album before this, Fear of Music, instead focuses on the meaning of texture and tonality in music. More on that with this next band coming up. If you think you'd enjoy hypnotic, danceable music that is as accessible as it is weird, Remain in Light is the album for you. Also, if you got this far, you might as well like and subscribe. It's free and I would really appreciate it a lot as it helps out the channel. This next band took the experimentation of textures and tones in rock music and instead combined them with the ease of atmospheric and meditative jazz. Talk Talk is the definition of less is more, preferring to play with sounds rather than traditional notes. Zooming in on the specifics, their albums Spirit of Eden and Laughingstock experiment heavily with dynamic contrast and instrumental texture, but doesn't sacrifice emotional intensity at all. Not only is this an amazing album for learning what you prefer texturally and dynamically, it's also a good album to let you know what you prefer emotionally. If you enjoy passionate, heartfelt songs that evoke a sense of beauty and trust with the world around you, there's almost nothing better in rock. I'd say both of these albums are must-listens for anyone looking to broaden their horizons and musical perspectives for what really is music. Is music really based on notes, Or is it a combination of noise and silence, the loud and quiet, the relaxed and the intense? Stereolab is a band that I recommend to pretty much everyone that I meet, and for good reason. It's the perfect middle ground to quirked up, danceable beats and the experimental electronic techniques. This band is still rooted in rock, but combines the acoustic with the electronic in ways that only few bands have been able to do successfully. Stereolab's eclecticism opens up many pathways to many different genres. It's seemingly the gateway drug to good avant-garde music. Your best start with this band would be songs off of Dots and Loops, as well as Emperor Tomato Ketchup, as these two bands have the best balance between electronic and avant-garde rock. If you prefer the more rocky sides of this music, then maybe something like Kosmische music or krautrock would be up your alley. Krautrock was a heavy influence on Stereolab's music. However, if you prefer the eccentric electronic tones, then boy do I have a band for you. In my opinion, Battles is one of the most underrated rock bands of all time. Being made up of 4, then 3, then 2 members, all on a hell-bent mission to combine electronic tones with acoustic instruments. Each album feels like its own universe, being made up of many small spinning cogs and wheels. This band's goal is very similar to Stereolab's, but maybe with a bigger focus on being avant-garde rather than poppy. Their music is very mechanical and dense, yet still remains rhythmic and understandable for most people. The songwriting on their debut album, Mirrored, is still just as fresh and unique as it is today. I would heavily recommend listening to this album, as the tones and textures here are unrelentingly distinctive and will direct you into many avenues of experimental rock music such as post-rock, math rock, and even to industrial rock. This band is also a blast to watch live, and their creativity is unparalleled in modern rock music. For all of the punks out there looking to move away from the brash, stage diving, beer chugging, and slam dancing mainstream scene, look no further than post-punk with the band Wire. This band's version of punk rock is as fast and playful as it is brainy and smart. While the Sex Pistols were focused on making people lash out at the system, Wire instead preferred to analyze and solve the problem. 2 different forms of self-expression, 2 different emotional qualities. Wire's first 3 albums are ordered perfectly from least to most avant-garde. Give Pink Flag a try if you think you'd enjoy this intelligent version of punk rock music. Then give Chairs Missing a try for more avant-garde production. And finally, 154 for the ultimate voyage to the mysterious, the ominous, and the abstract. It seems that a lot of experimentation with rock music has to do with texture specifically, and noise rock prophets Sonic Youth are no exception. For any fan of the grunge rock music that plays on the radio today, you have this band to thank. Sonic Youth's music is reliant on guitar noise, and experimentations with said guitar noise. This genre of noise rock is a make or break for a lot of people. As inexperienced listeners could say it's just, well, noise. But listen further and give it time, and you'll notice that a lot of these songs are still in the format of rock music. These songs aren't just noise for the sake of making noise, it's noise as a means to convey emotion and desperation to be understood. Your best bet to understanding this would be Daydream Nation, possibly the statement that ushered in the 90s grunge indie sound. A very important and influential band in rock music. At some point in your experimental rock journey, you're gonna come face to face with things that might be out of your pay grade. This could range from some honorable mentions like Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band, who is known for making one of the most avant-garde albums of all time, to krautrock experts Can, and to outsider bands like 70s Faust. The honorable mention specifically goes to that second band, krautrock experts Can. It is impressive how much they influence their respective genre. On top of having one of the best album runs of all time, this avenue of experimental music leads its way to many, many different experimental bands, such as New, the aforementioned Faust, Amandul 2, Cluster, Polpulva, and This Heat. Their sound relies on repetitive rhythms, immersive soundscapes, and plenty of wacky improvisation. Try out Future Days first for the easiest way to get into this band, with its tropical background and gentle pulses. This album goes down like a smooth glass of pina colada. As for Tego Mego and Ege Bamyasi, 2 albums that came out before Future Days, expect a lot more experimentation and way more manic songs. Ege Bamyasi is sort of in the middle of these 2 albums in terms of difficulty. Can is a well-known, influential, and yet still popular band that stands the test of time as masters of the vinyl age. Give them a listen for sure. Regardless of Can's inclusion, I'd still say that there's another band that is the best for delving into experimental music. Their discography is so vast that you'll for sure find something that you enjoy at least a little bit. Swans is a band that is still making waves in the musical canon to this day. Their legacy started with aggressive no-wave album, Filth, which is a brutal and vicious listen that is definitely made for masochists. Even worse are the aching riffs and groans of Cop, their most filthy album to date, and even more filthy than, well, filth. Nightmarish. I wouldn't say it's the best start to their discography though, and would instead direct newcomers to albums such as White Light from the Mouth of Infinity, a journey through folk-like melodies with the gloominess of gothic characteristics. Each song flows beautifully into each other, like an evil children's storybook, but I'd recommend listening to the version that has Blind on it for the best experience. This, along with The Great Annihilator and Children of God, are the perfect stepping stones to a more varied musical understanding. Experimental, yet still just as enjoyable as anything else. Excellent albums, and then if you want to go more experimental, you can give Soundtracks for the Blind a try, a deep manifesto of the darkest qualities of life and death, or go somewhat lighter with The Burning World and Love of Life. Even during their comeback, which is still going on in the current year 2025, they've released countless acclaimed albums in the style of post-noise rock. 2010's Swans released To Be Kind, The Seer, The Beggar, and the recent Birthing, all amazing albums for getting into experimental music. I'd say this is probably the most quality and quantity band in experimental music, but let me know what you think in the comments. That was a lot of yapping, but I hope you learned something new, and we'll be taking a look at some of these bands that are really the gates to a wider palette of musical listening. All 10 of these bands have one thing in common, and that is being extremely innovative, as well as making a significant difference in rock music that'll be remembered for decades to come. Anyways, that's it for this video, everyone. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, or dislike it if you didn't like it. Tour de Force out.